Okay. All right, well, we're nearing the end of the migration. We've got virtually everything in place, but we have some outstanding issues, one of them being the statements for accounting. Our KDS and POS systems are in place and operational. The kitchen staff that here has been trained on that. Our committee pages have all been set up, and the administrators have been, the roles have been assigned. So if you're on a committee and you haven't spoken to Scott yet, get with him and he can give you your information about those committee pages and how to operate those and how to upload items to them. On the groups, we still are waiting for North Star to give Scott training this week on assigning roles. And so as soon as that happens, he'll be able to get with each of the group presidents and do the same thing for them that we've done for the committees. The website is operational. If you have any issues getting on or if you find any problems with it, you can let Scott Manning know. But as far as we know, most of the website is running well. The Lake Kiowa POA app is in a training phase right now. We're waiting Apple and Google to approve it for their stores. Once they implement, or once they approve that for release in their stores, you'll be able to find that in the Apple store and the Google store. We don't have an ETA on that right now, but we're expecting within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah, that's about accurate, probably 2 weeks.
Okay. So we had some issues with the North Star data dumps, which the office worked very hard to resolve those, and they had some issues getting the statements out, but to my understanding, all the statements went out a little over a week ago.
They were mailed Monday and people should have gotten them.
Okay. And let's see if are there any other issues related to the statements?
The only thing that was about your attention is the 2 columns don't match up, and the total dollar amount is correct. It's the individual card.
Okay. So most of these issues are being worked with the North Star team right now, between the office and them. The Kiowa Connect Neighbor website is still operational. So if you, for any reason, can't get things to work on the North Star website, you fall back to the Neighbor website, and we're still monitoring that as well. But there will be a cutoff in the coming days, and Scott will announce that. Both in communications on the webpage and also through links from the Neighbor website, they'll redirect you to the new website, so that at some point nobody will be using the Neighbor site and everything will go through North Star. So the outstanding issues that we have, we've talked about the trial balances, income statement calculations. We had some issues resolving owners with multiple lots having multiple ACH accounts that they wanted to use to make payments. We're still working with them. Not resolved. Oh, it's not possible? Okay. Okay. And just so you know, we're one release behind in North Star. I don't know if that's in the new implementation of North Star, but that may be something that they took as a recommendation to add. Okay. So we may have to upgrade to the next release to be able to do that. There was an incorrect card template for membership cards. That will resolve that yet. And there was a security interface between the back office membership view and what security sees. So that's the only other outstanding issue that I know that we're working to resolve. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Mike.
I would like to say, not just for those that are here, but also for the ones that will be watching us later on. Is that, I know the other day I was talking to Crystal about the North Star and the accounting, some of the problems that we are encountering there. And she was made it known to me that the patience and the support that they have gotten from residents has really been good. You know, anytime we change to a new automation system, it's not one of these, it just works. It takes time getting everything transferred over. So anyway, for the residents that are out there and for you that's in here, I know that you really appreciate the support and how everybody's kind of, hey, we'll get it going. So that's kind of where we are with it, right? Okay.
My board principals, and Brian, is it fair to say that North Star has been very cooperative and responsive to the things that you're bringing?
Next item is committee updates. First one, Architectural Control Committee, Jim and Michael Body.
Okay, so, the only thing that we have for the, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so the only thing that we have for the board tonight is a deconstitution of lots on, at 620 and 622 Power Drive East, lot 448, 449. These lots were constituted quite a while ago before this owner, but this owner subsequently purchased the property with a house that was straddling both properties and a septic system on lot 449. Since then, the house, all the structures have been destroyed and removed, and the owner had a contract to sell 448, and so we told them they had to be constituted in order to do that, to execute that sale. And I went out and verified that the septic system was only on lot 449, and it's within that lot by a good 38 feet. So there's nothing to do with 448 as far as the septic goes. The owner is retaining 449 with the intention of putting another home there. And so he'll be submitting a permit for a home on that property. And 448 has a boat dock on it, and it will be sold to the buyer. There were no outstanding issues other than that location of the septic. We wanted to verify and make sure there was not any part of the septic on 448, and it's not. So the committee approved the deconstitution, and I'll let Jim make the recommendation to the board.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a motion with for the recommendation of the Architectural Control Committee to deconstitute lots 448, 449.
Have a motion. Have a second. We have a motion to constitute lots 448, 449. Do we have a second on the motion? Jerry, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item, golf committee, Randy Romine.
The last golf committee meeting, we had a series of people coming in, asking for exceptions to the cart rules. One of them was a fireman that was on duty, and in case he had to leave, and then we had some emergency personnel, and then we had, people that were worried about the new Delta strain coming in. And as discussion went with the golf committee, we like the rules that are in place now, but we thought we might be able to amend it and appease everybody and make it be a little more functional. And we came up with a 3-cart max rule, not changing any rules that we already have, with encouraging people to double up, because we already allow 3 carts and a bicycle. So what it would amount to is the 3 carts would be if you had a horse that somebody felt like they were not coming to ride with somebody because of COVID, or if a doctor was on duty and on call and had to leave in a second instead of him having to find a place to drop his rider off or whatever. That was the example that they came through. Plus, in the evenings after the marshals leave, a single will come want to go play around and hold the golf. And it looks like it's clear sailing until you get to number 7, and then there's a foresman in front of you, and they get held up, and then here comes the next single right behind him. And then the pro shop and gets flooded with phone calls. If there's 2 people out there, they're not in the same cart, and sometimes 3 people. So talking with our course superintendent, he was in favor of the 3 carts, saying that there's no difference in a bison and a threesome, except that there's less weight in threesome and a bison. So as far as taking care of the golf course, there's not any difference as long as we keep it to 3 carts. So what I would like to do is make a suggestion that we keep our same rules, and just put a 3 cart max with our cart rules. So that's what I'm.
We're not going to change the rule.
No, we're just amending and adding to make it easier for the marshals, easier for the pro shop, and easier to explain that for our clientele.
Does anybody have any questions for Randy on this? Randy, does that mean that we can have 3 carts, just single rider each one?
That would be the worst case scenario, that'd be the max. And hopefully if we encourage and we've got people doing the correct habits now, if something doesn't happen, then I don't think that'll be a problem. Nobody will.
Jim?
Based on what I heard from Randy said, I think technically we are changing the law, so I think.
Okay, yeah, whatever it has to take to add to the rule, the 3 cart max. We find I have no problem with that.
Okay, you making a motion on it?
Yes, please, make a motion to have a 3 cart max added to our existing rules.
Any second, need a second? John? Any discussion on it? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next one was, we're just carrying from our last meeting, we're, make a motion to accept the WGA, donation for the trees. We discussed it last week, so now we've got it on the agenda. There's no motion.
Do I have a second for the motion? Courtney, any discussion? I have one question. Are we going to, where the trees are going to be put, make sure we talk to the residents around who lives on the fairway or whatever?
Well, I'm not saying we won't talk to every resident. Brian's in charge of, and gang committee and put them in the correct spots. And, you know, I think they're gonna put them where, you know, even though some people may be upset that they're gonna do the best of their knowledge, it's gotta be fair.
Okay. Courtney?
Randy, I'm not on the golf course, but I noticed the one right out here by the pavilion looks dead. Do we have a guarantee on those when we buy them?
Yes, Brian said yes, check this out, yes.
Thank you.
You know how long, Brian? 1 year. 1 year warranty.
Great.
Any other discussion? Okay, motion, we have a motion second, all in favor, aye. Opposed, motion carries.
All right, and the last one was another carryover from, the meeting. I asked y'all to, if y'all could come up with any reason why we shouldn't have a youth fee, of $20 for the guys that, are grandsons or granddaughters that can't drive a car because they're under the age of 12. And we used to just say, hey, pay the fly fee, but now you get your tea time, when your tea time, you may apply for a fly fee and get a fly tea time. You have no control over that. So, I'm gonna make a motion that we, have, a $20 youth fee added to our pro shop,
What age is that?
12 and under.
We have a motion, do we have a second? John? Any more discussion, any more questions? As my question is, do we have an age that we're gonna have it? Anyone? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And one last thing that's come up, is, I got the golf leagues get more I've talked ever. Here last week on the number one tee, I looked out across and there was a cart going that had a daddy and two young boys in it, looked like they were 8 or 10 years old. And they had their golf cart of a little one, and then they had a little bitty one that had a golf cart on the bag and was carrying across the golf. Because we have our pro shops that you have to have a bag for each player, and you got to have 2 bags per cart. Well, the little guys are not old enough to drive a cart, and the dad's trying to get them out to play. It was at 6:30 in the evening, which they weren't disrupting anything. And I went and asked around, so I'm just trying to follow the rules. I'm wondering if we can give a little discretion to the pro shop and say, hey, it's okay to have, a little bitty bag on the golf carts, and let the dad get a lot quicker than the kiddo carrying it all the way around. The bag was bigger than he was. So something's not right. I don't know how you go, so hang around special situations, kind of like we do with COVID, they're not gonna hold down a golf course and tell the marshal, because,
I assume that would be like after 5 o'clock in the evening rather than.
that's what it was, so. But it'd be worse if it was 10 o'clock in the morning. You had the 50-year-old carrying the bag around in front of the office, so down there, we don't want it. And they don't have any choice, they can drive the golf cart, he's got his 2 sons out, want to play. Sometimes those 18 of them are better than we are. Sometimes. So I'm just throwing it out there, and I've talked to Brown about it, and if they're like to make money back to the board next time for more discussion, y'all think about it, things are working out that way.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna, since one on the agenda, we're just let it go tonight. And next, item on the agenda, front gate, committee recommendation and possible action for the rezoning vote, August 9th. Jill Evans.
Let me do a handout. That's around here. I think so. All right, so, as, the front entrance committee has worked through a plan to go to, a vote petition for, rezoning of the, property up front. There's a number of things that, the committee thought we needed to think through, and we had some feedback from the election committee and the audit or vote manager. And so it just raised some points that if we do a vote that includes both paper ballots and or electronic ballots, that there are some things to work through. Also, we had previously said we we're going to start on August 9th. We're going to go for 6 months. That would have us run into the annual election by 8 or 9 days. It starts in February. So there was some discussion around that. So I've documented for all of you guys what and provided to you what the front entrance committee talked about and what their position was. I think I should maybe take those in some kind of order, and maybe the order they're in, and have us act on it. Otherwise, just to make sure that the election, or what kind of election, the vote petition, how is done orderly, and there's a rule covering everything. Because we haven't, if we, the front entrance committee, I should back up and say the front entrance committee has always been of the opinion that in order to give a covenant vote to go through, there's a lot of votes, and we over 724 votes. That committee thought we might need the ability to do paper ballots and make sure people that
don't have a means to do electronic voting, or don't care about it, don't care how to learn about it, so we can get a ballot to them so they can vote. So that, when we do that, it creates complications in the system. I want to go through those to make sure we're all on the same page. So would you guys like me to just take them one at a time? Okay. I think we've already approved the date of August 9th, and I think we already approved 6 months. I think we probably ought to make sure we're all on this, because there has been questions about rolling in and causing confusion with the annual vote, because we all agree that this vote stop at 6 months or stop at something else short of that. I know that, so the committee basically recommended that we go ahead and let it go all the way to February 8th before, which will overlap and allow for 6 months. And the thinking was that there's not going to be much voting by the time we get to 6 months or 5 months. But, so that was a recommendation of the committee.
Anyone have any comments or any discussion on this? John?
There's several problems, I think, with 6 month election. First of all, it's not required. We have 30 days of work, 60 days of work, 90 days of work. Some would work better than others, but they all would be within the bounds of by law and covenants. One of the problems is we have an overlap with the elections in February. We would also have a problem with the Christmas holidays, Thanksgiving holidays, all those things where people's minds aren't on voting anymore. I think my own personal opinion is, a recommendation is that it would be a 90-day period in which to vote from August the 9th to December the 9th, 2021. Should be ample time for everyone who wants to vote to vote. I don't see any particular reason why it should be extended beyond beyond that length of time. 6 months is not required, except wherever appears, so that phrase has to do with changing a covenant, not rezoning. Yeah, personally, I just think it's way too long to drag out an election. And with a time like that might also future problems down the road. And one of the problems we're going to be talking about tonight, I'm sure, has to do with when to call the election. Picking on that too. But that's why the 90-day period is more viable to my estimation than any other period longer than 90 days. That's what
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I'll go back to the committee that recommended it, because 6 months are allowed for a covenant, petition to change the covenant, and the rezoning does come out of the covenants. It also, the committee feels that, and we've never passed a covenant change or anything in 90 days before. And it's very hard to get that number of votes. The last time, Courtney came to tell me, but I think it was around 2011, that there was a covenant vote, and it was a lot of manual work, a lot of, back then it was all paper voting. But it was a lot of work, and a lot of committees had to get out, and it took all of 6 months to get that happening, so.
It's 4.5 months.
Okay. And, and then the 90 days, you said December, and 90 days is actually November. Okay.
August 9th.
And,
Come on, listen. But anybody else? Anything? Anybody else? Gary?
What happens after 90 days? We have
the petition would fail, the rezoning would fail, and we have a property that's sitting there, not, as we can't use the property other than to let it sit there, or be a resident, we could rent it out, or we could tear it down and let it become a park, but we can't use it for purposes of residential.
Is there anything that says we can't go ahead and add 30 more days if it doesn't pass funding? Or do you have to say it's over?
What John is saying is it's a little confused, or it can be confusing, because the covenants talk about changes to the covenants, and then it says 6 months, and rezoning comes out of the covenants. But it also says that rezoning is a vote. Then you can refer to the bylaws, and the bylaws do talk about a period of time for which a vote can occur. And I'm assuming John's got the right number. It's like 30 days. You can't announce it more than 30 days before it starts. And then, but then I think it can only go 60 days. I think technically 60 days. But you can announce the vote, but I don't think the vote can. We'll have to read the bylaws. We go by the bylaws. But the recommendation is to go by the covenant.
Gotcha. Thank you. John?
One of the things,
I think, we have to keep in mind that this vote is not a covenant vote, it's a covenant style vote. We're not changing the covenant. So all the rules that have to do with changing the covenant apply to the changing the covenant, and we're not doing that. And speak to Jerry's question, you know, we can't go on to have an election that has to last long enough to win. We've got to have some kind of immunity to it. And now I mentioned we may all disagree about how long that may ought to be, but if we can't resolve this issue within 90 days, I don't see how I don't see what 6 months would do for us. Another thing is, with the auditor receiving, which I'm going to talk about later, the auditor receiving the votes, we shouldn't put it that way. Who voted which way, or how many votes in the affirmative we had. But we do know all the time who hasn't voted. We know that from our own records inside our system. And so those are people with whom or for whom we could campaign flat out for 90 days. It's a lot easier to campaign for 90 days, take my word for it, than it is for 6 months. And we can concentrate on those persons that haven't voted yet, not how they're supposed to vote, but get them to vote, because as we know, no vote is a no vote. And so I reemphasize, and I guess I'm repeating myself, but I just cannot imagine why more than 90 days would be necessary to do this, especially if we mind our P's and Q's and get out there and campaign for what we get people to vote, not necessarily. Anyone else? Oh, Kathy, you're there. You have any input, Kathy, on this?
I would like to say also from the election committee that I believe it would be an impact if potentially this election did run the longer time, the 6 months, and I would prefer it to be done at least in 90 days.
Thank you.
Point out, we have election committee, 2 people. We have a front entrance committee, over 10 people, and very distinguished, long time task board members, and they're registered in opinion. So, so I'll put forth a motion on this item that we allow for a 6-month vote starting August 9th.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
That's just a motion to start, not to stop.
Start on August 9th and go for 6 months.
A motion starting August 9th for 6 months. Do I have a second?
I'll second it just to pick up the discussion. So
Have a second, we have a discussion.
Um, I would say the covenants, covenant 102, doesn't give any guidance as to how long rezoning vote should take. So it's up to the board at this time, unless we change it, it's up to the board to set the length of time. I would be in favor of closing the election before the February, certainly before the February, at least no later than January. I also, and maybe we might ask Mr. Tidwell, but, you know, we had talked about calling the election when we have enough votes, yes or no. But vote now had told us that people can continue to vote if we set a longer date and change their vote. Because they said the second vote counted, so I was wondering if we could hear from Mr. Tidwell.
So I want to make one comment that I think we, meaning myself as well, I think a lot of times we call something a covenant vote, and really what we're talking about is a vote based upon owners, because that's most typically when we see it is when you have a covenant vote. But I agree with what Corky said, that really what we're operating under is 1.02, which is a rezoning. So it is not technically a covenant vote, but it does use that covenant vote style because it's based upon an affirmative vote of owners of the majority of the privately owned lots. So I think that sometimes our nomenclature, because we're talking about different kinds of elections, I think we use covenant vote, when that's probably not technically right, although everybody understands what we're saying. So I agree that this is not technically a covenant vote, but it operates in the same manner as a covenant vote. But because there is no specified time period, I believe the board does have some discretion in setting the time period of how long that is. And I did have some questions previously about the 6-month period, and that I believe, and again, I'm trying to read what other people have done in the past, but I think that that period was a period designed so that if you had covenants that needed to be changed by a certain period, you gave the board and the community a 6-month period to deal with covenant changes. And I think that's a different mechanism than what we're talking about here, where we're voting on a zoning item. So that's kind of the way I reconcile the different sections.
Do you think we could call the vote when we had enough votes on one side or the other?
I would recommend, I can't show you by the letter of the law where you can't do that, but there are both state law issues and also some other covenant provision that would deal with the recount. And I would have serious concerns about the gray areas that you would create in the event that there was some issue with the election and someone called for a recount. Then that would, I think that rolling election would just set you up for a lot of problems and potential failure based on the rolling vote. So I would say that the board would be better advised to set a date certain to end the vote.
And I'm just, can you help me interpret this too, because I may rescind the motion based on what you're saying. But it said, if you're going by our bylaws 6.01, the ballot shall be sent to all members at least 30 days prior to the closing date of the acceptance of the ballot, but not earlier than 60 days. So that means to me that it's a 60-day vote is all we can have. If we don't use the covenant.
That, I believe that may be an issue. So it may be that if you're looking at that, and I did some additional research on that, and it looked like what happened is there are, when you look at the state law in this area, you have many POAs that do everything, just come to the meeting and raise your hand. And then you have a separate set of laws that deal with the secret voting, which is what we're doing by ballot. And it looks like what that they did here was they took some of the longer days and kind of combined those two processes into 6.01. So I think that there is an argument here that if you're going to hook 5.02 to 6.01, then you would be looking at a 60-day election. I think that is a potential issue.
Yeah, I would maintain that 601, as you read through 601 down further, they're certainly talking about a bylaw vote. We have two styles of bylaw votes and we have two styles of covenant votes. And so I know if it's not clear in this document, you could look in this document, but it clearly is talking about a bylaw. So I think the board could set whatever time that they wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that I agree, and it's unclear. 6.01 is somewhat unclear because 5.02 doesn't have a limitation. 6.01 has limitations, and then when you get to the covenant vote, it stretches it out to 6 months. Again, because I think you're dealing with different issues that may require different time for community understanding, advertisement, voting, and those sorts of things.
So would we be out of compliance if we approve this motion for 6 months? Or maybe something shorter or something longer than 60 days? Are we out?
I think that the thing with bylaws is you don't see a case law very often because each group writes their own laws. From the lawyer point of view, the safest thing to do that would prevent any issue would be to call it for 60 days. And then that argument, if somebody wanted to argue that 6.01 does apply to 5.02, and 60 days is coming. But again, I cannot tell and have not seen anything in history that would tell me for sure whether or not 6.01 does apply to 5.02. There is a suggestion that it doesn't because of 13.02, but again, I'm not a judge and I'm not going to be able to give you a definitive answer on that just because you've got 3 different sections that really deal with 3 different matters.
So I will point out the history does say that we've never passed a covenant vote or covenant. Anything that requires 700 or the majority of all members defined as 724 months of that. So I would like to point that out. I'm skeptical of the protocol in 6 days.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second for that discussion. Are you satisfied with the response that you got from Mr. Tidwell? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second discussion. Shall we vote on this? All in favor? Opposed? Good.
Yes.
Motion does not carry.
Well, we'll need a for some some point of time when we pass this before.
John?
My motion is that we set the election dates from August the 9th to November 9th, 2021. Would be available. If anyone wanted to offer an amendment to make it till December 9th, we can accept that. But my motion is for 90 days, so August the 9th.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
More discussion on the, Jim?
So we're all okay, we're just concerned that it's 6 months, we're not concerned that it's over soon, 6 days. So that's good, and I support John in that, but I would, friendly amendment amended to December 9th, and I would like to do that because I believe the finance committee
So we have an amendment to the motion. Do I have a second on that? Randy?
To just add, additional 30 days to John's, motion to allow it to go to December 9th.
Any further discussion? Nancy?
I have a question for you. You mentioned that in Corky did also that no other votes for covenant style votes that we've done before have been done within that 60 days and 4.5 months or whatever. And so there's precedent, if you will, that we've done that before. And so we must have been within the letter of the law. You know, that no one, well, at this point in time, no one's come back and said that we couldn't have done that. So it sounds like to me, we can do something a longer period of time. That's my question. And the other is the fact that in the last meeting, we did approve it would start August the 9th. We just said it could last up to 6 months. And so now we're setting a new date. Is that correct?
Right. Okay, we have an amendment to the motion that was set to now be December 9th. Any more discussion on the amendment?
Can I just
Yeah.
try to address Nancy's point that I believe it's fair to say it's a, because I was going to say it's covenants that we only did, but I think they've done rezoning in the past. Working on that.
Yeah, we've only had two, to my knowledge, in the 26 years I was here, only two rezoning votes, one passed and one failed. There is no record of how long the first one took. It was a individual that took it on herself and went from house to house and door to door, which we don't, I don't think that's appropriate at this time, but the second one, the board and the realtor decided they want to get it done in a hurry, so they set a 30-day vote. That was agreed to.
Any more further discussion? Will
Wait,
give
May I say something, Sam? Randy Hell, people think,
okay, Randy.
can I just have clarification with what y'all are fixing to vote on? Is based on time frame covenants or based on time frame? Time frame for covenants requires majority vote. Bylaws that doesn't require majority vote, just whichever is greater. Vote yes or vote no. A no vote is not counted in the bylaws, correct? So changing the time frame based upon bylaws, shouldn't the type of vote be also changed with that?
Randy, last time when we did this, we got a legal opinion of how to do that. And it was electronically, and just like we're talking about now, only one signature, et cetera. And so we got the legal opinion and we went with that. So it wasn't a covenant vote, it was a covenant vote in a manner like John Roach indicated, that we're going to just the owners and need a 50% majority plus one to pass that. That was the legal opinion that we have and we went with.
So sticking to the covenant style of vote, but you're changing the time frame based on what the bylaws require?
No, that's not correct. The covenant 102 on rezoning is silent about the length of time. And so we've determined that that is left up to the owner, in this case it's us, to determine the amount of time the election shall last.
So now it's just a discussion whether it's 6 months or less.
Or a year, or whatever, correct?
Okay, we've had discussion. We have an amendment to the motion. All in favor of going to December 9th? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? amendment passes. Are you okay with that? Okay. Okay, John, are you withdrawing your motion for the, November 9th?
Yes, I was just arguing that the amendment had passed.
Okay, all right. All right, go ahead, Jim, next one.
The next item was, again, the committee contemplated the need for, paper, ballots to, help get out the vote and make sure we got, enough people voting and get everybody a chance to vote. Feel like I'm on a federal election case right now, so with if we're gonna do paper and electronic, I think we just start there and say, are we in favor of paper and ballot, or paper and electronic? There are some things that follow that we need to address, but we don't need to if we don't allow for both of them. We'll point out the bylaws do say, and I'm giving you a copy of it, basically, it does say that the ballots can be distributed by mail, by hand, or electronically. Bylaws.
And I think that's clear, so that doesn't need to be a motion approved by the board, in my opinion.
Okay, so then moving to the next one.
Just have a comment. As Jim pointed out, the bylaws require some kind of distribution of the ballots. Figured out how those should be distributed, I suppose. The part of the risk of that is that the person has an opportunity to vote both ways. It might be assuming that board agreed bylaws would permit to this sort of person who doesn't vote electronically or can't at the moment have to be able to request a ballot and have that ballot sent to them or delivered to them on their request by some POA personnel. Now, as I say, there may be some dispute with us, but I do think there's a real danger if someone made up two sets of ballots and vote both of them.
Well, we're getting to that, so that's a valid point, and we need to address it.
Let me just say, too, just like I said earlier, the last board put a lot of effort into electronic voting, which we did. And in that election, we had, I think, over 800 people cast ballots. I hate to see us get away from the electronic voting when that's what we put in place and it worked so good the last time. And now we're going to want to do electronic voting and paper ballot voting. We should have, in my opinion, one or the other. And we can set it up to where people that say, I don't have a computer or I don't have an email address. What we did before, they went to the POA office and there's a computer sitting there and someone would help them, but they can do their voting. I just hate to see us, how many paper ballots are we going to have to send out? How many paper ballots delivered? There is some cost in paper ballots, so I think we need to think about that as far as an electronic versus a paper ballot.
Well, that's fine. Everybody gets to decide here. So it does allow, again, bylaws allow for us to do it by any of those means through the distribution process. It doesn't say how the distribution process is, it's in person, by mail, electronically. It's pretty clear, I think, on those. I guess I should put forth a motion to go with the front entrance committee's unanimous recommendation to allow paper and electronic ballots. And then we'll talk about the other nuances and the board after this.
Anybody got any motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Second, Jim Fox, any discussion?
only to the point where if a person does request a paper ballot, it would not be handled by any owner or POA employee. It would be mailed directly back to the auditor, who would open it and count them.
That's, well, that's, we can talk about that, but that's not what the bylaw says. That's not- The bylaw says you can hand deliver, mail, or provide it electronically. And then it just says it will return to a location defined by the POA. So we'll define, we can define it.
I understand what it says. I'm recommending that we not open or touch the ballot. We send it to our auditor, who opens and counts, and he's agreed to do that.
Are you making an amendment to it, or are you an addition?
I don't think that was part of his motion. It was just part of my comment. He said he'll talk about that later.
I mean, we should address that, to your point, and that is an item, so I think we have to say, first, are we gonna do paper? And I guess if you wanna say, well, I don't wanna do it, your position on the next item, that's what we can combine all that somehow.
Okay.
I keep hearing you say paper, we're gonna do paper. Now, are we doing paper, or are we doing electronic, and if people cannot vote electronic, are we doing paper?
Both. Allow votes on paper, which would be hand delivered or mailed according to bylaws, and then electronic, which would come to them electronically as they have been received.
And of course, it's done by the federal government, the state that way as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've had the discussion. All in favor of the motion that we use paper and electronic voting? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so the next item is to address the report you were bringing up. And the bylaws do state that ballots mailed, hand carried, or by electronic ballots sent to the designated locations. The front entrance committee agreed on a 10-to-1 vote that we should allow for all methods of distribution provided for in the bylaws, and then the return location would be the vote managers or the auditor, third-party independence address. There was, if I can hope, I should note that the committee also believed that the POA office could receive those ballots. They're sealed. Keep in mind that they'll be sealed in this case, and they'll be forwarded to the vote manager from the POA office. But
Like a motion to this.
I'll make a motion that we, motion we have follow the bylaws on the distribution and make sure the return address location will be the vote manager's office address. And also allow the POA office to receive ballots and forward those ballots on a regular basis to the vote manager's office.
Okay, we have a motion, do I have a second? Nancy? Discussion?
Well, as I said before, if it has the auditor's address on it, there's no need for the POA to get them back. They would go directly from the person. POA office could mail them out, but they would go back directly to the auditor. His staff would open them. He said he wouldn't charge us any additional because he does this at various places all around the country.
Someone could distribute it by hand and then receive that back into their hands to take it to the POA. It would be sealed, so they could take it back to the POA or put it in the mailbox for that person, if that person gave them the authority to do so.
Then if you say that, then I would amend the motion that we mail the ballot out and the ballot be mailed directly to the auditor. And we will not go to the owner's house.
And you would not be following the bylaws.
Now, the bylaw says we can, it doesn't say we will.
Okay, we have an amendment to the motion, do I have a second?
May I have a- ask that question for clarification?
Right.
The amended motion. Working with these ballots go to the members, the paper ballots. Is that on their request or just because it's a good idea?
No. I would say, last time, we only had about 15 people come in and use the secondary ballot method. So I would say, we put out originally that if you can't vote by email and need a paper ballot, that we will mail you one and you will mail it back to the auditor, just so that we don't go to great grandma's house and slip up on her asking, how should I vote? You know, I think it's just a more transitional, it's more clear if we keep our hands off the ballot. And so it can be mailed out from the auditor or it can be mailed out from the POA office, but it doesn't come back to us at all.
Is that in your motion, what you just said? I want to be sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is that the POA employee and our POA owners do not go to the house to deliver a paper document. That they would have to call the POA office and request a paper ballot. One would be mailed to them with a return envelope directly to our auditor.
If that's the motion on the floor, the amended motion, I second it.
We have a motion, we have a second, any more discussion?
Doesn't say may, so
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
it shall be mailed. It doesn't say may in there. It says association shall be by ballot, hand carried, or electronic, or hand carried or mail. It doesn't say may. So we can allow all three, or so it says it should allow.
Sam?
Go ahead, Kathy.
As we traditionally have always mailed the ballots directly to the member, as far as I'm aware, that we did not hand carry. One, you wouldn't be able to track it. Two, how do you get it back for sure? But I agree with Corky and John that the proper way, and in discussions with our auditor, he felt very confident that that was the better way to handle it. If we're going to be having the POA take this burden on, then we're going to have to bring back the full-blown 5-member election committee to make sure that we are tracking those and that they will not be opened until the ballot is finished.
Thank you, Kathy. More discussion? Do we have a, go ahead, John.
Just want to make an observation. The POA is sort of a party of interest in this election, which is one of the reasons why we should be handling the ballots. And as I pointed out in the last board meeting, it's been said it's not who votes that counts, it's who counts the votes. And some dictators think that they're. But so that is a really important part of this motion that Corey's just made.
Well, then I would amend that motion that the ballot, if requested, come directly from the auditor, which he's agreeable to do.
As a committee, I would second that motion. We need to dispose of.
Hey, you want to restate your motion and complete, amend your motion?
If a person, if an owner, qualified owner, requests a paper ballot, the paper ballot would be mailed by our auditor directly to that owner, and the ballot would be mailed directly back to the auditor. We, POA employees and we members will not touch the ballot or have access to fill it out for grandma.
You second the motion, okay. Do we have any discussion on the change amendment to the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And I think it's too late, but I should ask James a legal opinion on, shall be by ballot, hand carried, electronic. Is that the board in there gives us the ability to choose what we want, or all of them? Or is that really the shall and then names 3 or 4? And then
Are you reading from 6.01? Which section are you reading?
oh, I'm reading, around here, 6.01, first sentence.
By
I think it says mail, hand carry, or by electronic ballot sent to the designated locations. So or is usually permissive, and I think that the motion follows that by allowing electronic, or in other cases, paper. So I think we're within the bounds here, and both in your internal documents and in state law. In other places, it talks about hand sign, and both the state law and your internal documents recognize electronic ballots as being, quote, hand signed ballots. So I think that by delivering an electronic ballot, you are meeting that requirement.
But it's also, and it's also mail. So it's doing 2 of the 3. Can this board choose 2 of the 3, or does it have to, it says shall? So, and then with a or, and that will allow it to be 2 or 1 of the 3. Or even a number.
I think the or allows you to pick and choose.
Thank you.
And I want to make one clarification. I wasn't fast enough on the last one. Again, we're using terms interchangeably, and just to clarify the record, we're using the term auditor and vote manager back and forth. And I've heard some people use vote manager, and in your internal documents, you refer to that as your vote manager. Y'all have, I believe, hired your auditor to handle that function. So I just want to clarify that for people who haven't been tracking all of that, that's one and the same person.
Okay, Jim, you got more?
Yeah, thanks, everybody, for hanging in there. Okay, I don't think we need to address my 4th item. If somebody, if you want to read it, I think we need to address it now. That's fine. I don't think. Process. I think the only other one is, being that if we have, both paper and electronic in any way, there is a possibility of, somebody voting twice. And the rules don't state which one to count first or the second. I've heard in the past that the first, and then I've heard the election committee said somebody recommended that the vote manager said take the second. So I think it's imperative for the decide. And I can see both ways.
Do you have any comment on that, Mr. Bidwell?
No, I think it's discretionary.
Discussion board, okay. You want to make a motion as to which way we go with this, first or last? So we can turn that the vote manager know.
I'm deferred for you, John. I mean, somebody who, John's been in an election before, so I don't know. That said anything, Corky's helped run many, and Kathy after, I'm not, I just want to make sure we discuss it. I don't care. So anybody.
Kathy?
In the past, on the election committee, the judge at that point in time made the decision on dual votes. At times it was first, at times it was second. It just depended on the judge. And the chair and the committee followed his direction.
Hey, Andy, can you make a motion on, whether we go first or last as a part of the election committee?
I'm sorry, say that again, Sam?
Now, will you make a motion on whether we go first or last?
I would go on first.
Can you make that into a motion?
Yes. Make a motion to go on the first ballot, not the second.
Second the motion, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
There was one more on there, but I don't think we need to vote on it. It's just, well, maybe it's not to vote on because the way we decided how it was gonna operate, there's no update yet. Which I will say, I think we've greatly completed our chances of getting this passed with a number of things we've done, but I don't think that last item needs to be addressed about how often work the committee's updated with counting for or against votes. Because it's already decided.
Okay, anything else? No,
I just want, Jim just talked about here, have we decided that we're gonna get updates, and who's gonna get updates as to post?
Part of the motion was that we could only get updates on who hasn't voted earlier. That was what was put forward. And so if we don't know the vote tally along the way,
Vote, whether it's late. I just don't think we ought to try to call the election at any time, whether it's over with, and all it tells us is one, that's it.
well, I have no problem with that, what you're saying there. Other than I again think it was a covenant style vote and this was not a secret ballot. I don't think that's whatever they decide, that's fine. I would say that again, the committee was recommending that, to know that information, not so much to call the vote, but is to know the effort levels which these volunteers need to take in order to continue to get people to vote.
Andy, did you have something?
I apologize. I only got the last statement. Zoom froze up.
We're discussing as to whether to call the vote, shall it be called when the numbers reach, or shall we go completely to the end of the voting period?
Can I clarify? We can't call it anywhere between because we voted earlier, not because to do a secret ballot. Somewhere along the way we had that motion. So we can't call the vote any sooner than.
So we want the whole meeting.
We're running the full length based on what you guys voted on earlier.
Jim, is this where you want to have the list of names of people who have not voted? Is that what we're talking?
BOA has that, and they'll continue to do that for those people that haven't voted. But the committee desired to know the tabulation of votes one way or the other along the way. So we knew the level of effort that was needed to help get out the vote, go to see people, go talk to them more about those things. So, and provide more information. That's not what we decided. So I think we have to go in.
The recommendation I'd made at the last meeting was that the vote manager would send a weekly report if that's appropriate to Sam, and Sam would make the decision as to who needed to know that information.
We can't do that now.
Oh, you can distribute how many people voted, that's fine. The whole community can know that, but I mean, it's just, it's insignificant what we're discussing right now, but I'm trying to say based on what we voted on earlier.
Is that all we have?
We don't need, we've been doing that practice for a while.
Is that
Yes, that's all on the front entrance voting.
it? The next item, before we get started, let's think about a 10-minute break. Next item will be Clark with the investment committee. Any discussion? All in favor, approve? Approve. Okay, thank you, Clark. It's up to you now.
All right, first off, let me, just for clarification purposes with respect to the agenda and what might show up in the minutes, the committee's investment strategy is probably a harsher term than what we had. We actually recommended some investment vehicles to the board. That's what we did. The committee doesn't necessarily have an investment strategy, okay? And on top of that, we recommended those investment vehicles. There was actually one money manager and the rest of them we were going to do in-house. And we talked quite extensively about all that stuff at the last Wednesday's meeting. I don't necessarily have another presentation for you today. I think we kind of went very, very thorough through there at Wednesday's meeting for a good while. We recommended that strategy. It's up to the board to direct Crystal, and we will help Crystal with whatever the board recommends there. We went through several investment vehicles with you. I heard some questions about volatility. We talked a lot about interest rate risk. We talked a lot about investment grade, which is BBB or higher. That's where and so when you talk about some of the questions about volatility, I'm not sure we really answered that question. And let me answer that question for you real quick. And I like to use the illustration when we talk about volatility. I like to use the illustration of a dog wagging its tail. If he's got a 10-inch tail, the part that's right next to his bottom doesn't move very much, but the part that's way out here on the tip moves a lot. The part that's next to his bottom is what we call investment grade. The part that's out here at the end of the tail is called junk bonds and California real estate. It moves a lot, okay? So we're really talking about investment grade vehicles that are very close and they don't move a whole lot. If they do move, then we're able, and then the suggestion, the recommendation that we made with regard to the ETFs, we're able to move quickly with ETFs. They settle in a day and they settle hourly. They don't settle in 3 days or at the day's end, at the NAV at the day's end. Okay? And so that's kind of what we laid out for you. I'm here to answer questions if you have any. Hopefully, over the last 4 or 5 days, y'all have thought a lot about that. It's going to take us 30 to 60 days to implement anyway. It's not an overnight thing. We're going to go through a lot of stuff. We are going to develop a policy. Nancy's suggestion was a good one. We're going to do that. We'll bring it to you. One of the parts of that is we need to make sure that, well, most of what we're investing is our reserve funds. That's important to note. There is some O&M money that's part of that right now. We'll see what that looks like. And we'll take our instruction, or we'll help Crystal and Brian, and we'll take our instruction from you, and we will help them develop the investment package. That's all I've got.
Clark, we talked about money manager for half of that, and then Crystal on a monthly basis, doing CDs or something like that. Is that correct?
We talked about a money manager with ETFs on half the liquidity and doing longer term CDs. So there would not be 28-day rollers like we're doing right now. We could ladder some of that. We don't need to because of the ETFs. We don't need to ladder, but we could. But we're talking about 18 months. We looked at rates that are 12 to 18 months out for the CD section.
Clark, I asked this the other night and just asked it again, but an ETF is a fund that is based on an index of things. And so it will have volatility, maybe less so because it's the type of fund, but it will move up and down. And at any point in time, from 1 month to the next, we could be in a negative position until to where we were the previous month. That's possible, correct?
It is possible.
Correct, okay. And
But what I'm telling you is we put the strategy at investment grade or better, so the movement is very small.
but the
It's
movement,
not a bunch.
I know, but the movement could be, we don't know. We really don't know. If interest rates go up on an exchange traded fund, we could see a vast.
If you're in the bonds, yeah, you're right.
Right.
If you're in the bonds, that's correct.
Well, you need to know what the exchange traded fund is, and that will create, and will determine what that volatility is. And if interest rates go up, it's an ETF for bonds, we're gonna see.
Hey, I'm here to do what y'all want us to do.
Right.
I made a recommendation. Y'all discuss it and tell us what you want to do. Tell Crystal, tell Brian. We'll do whatever you want to do.
Did we ever get, I asked this did we ever get any more information on other POAs? And
Jay is not here. Jay was going to do that work, and he is not here. I have not. I don't know where to start. We did have, Corky did some work on that. They do, I know, and Brian sent me some information also. The POAs do invest reserve funds. That was big.
It's how we invested is my concern.
Well, I mean, there's investment grade, and then there's junk, then there's mediocre stuff, and then there's junk, okay? Well, our strategy is stick to investment grade. Which is high quality.
I understand what you're saying. All I'm saying is we've had no strategy, which is 28-day rolling CDs is no strategy at all. And just if we would implement a ladder of CDs, we'll probably make some level, a lot more money. With the relative term, I guess, but we'll make more money. I think by putting this into for the other 50%, putting it into something that has some risk, like an ETF, may not benefit us enough, that much more. on paper. One time. Or it could be,
Or it could.
or it could, and I also could say there's a number of other investments that we could get into.
There are, we went through a whole litany of them.
Right, there's a lot of them.
Sure. We chose this to recommend.
I have a question, Clark. As far as the bylaws on reserve funds, we don't have a problem as far as using reserve funds to go into an ETF or we're taking a risk. So, you know, even though it might be very slight, I think we need to make sure on that.
Sure.
And the other thing is, what your committee's gonna do is come up with a policy, you'll be coming back to the board recommending what to do and how much that we're wanting to put into it. I think you mentioned.
We already did that.
Yeah,
That was done Wednesday.
okay, the company that you presented to us would be the one that you'd be using.
Yes.
Okay. And also, I understand that they had what's their base amount that we have to have before we can get her to the ETF?
Well, their fees based on $1 million or more.
$1 million or more, okay. All right. And then, as far as the CDs that you'd be working with Crystal, it would be some that would be given to her, and what about on the amount?
We would be recommending contacts for Crystal, for Fidelity, Schwab, probably for us, bring them into it as well, and a couple others.
Okay.
And so they would have us on their board. It's not like when those CDs become available, and we stay within the insured limits, you gotta move quick. And so we go ahead and set up the criteria with all of our brokers. And then when they find one that meets our credit criteria, our rate, and our term, they call Crystal and she can pull the trigger on it or not.
Which is doing this for everybody's information. What are we getting on the CDs now? 0.01?
0.01.
Yeah, so I think.
On the $3 million investment, we got $15 last month.
Yeah, so I think we can do better.
I think.
Is there a way you guys as a committee, based on the projections, because that's what you base things on, was on your recommendations, projections, could you do a projection on what your recommendation was in terms of how much money the CD, as a lot of our CDs would bring in addition above our 28-day rolling CDs, and then what a projection of the ETF piece of that would?
No,
Okay.
I gave you the trailing 9 on the ETFs. The trailing 9 months was 1.77 on an investment grade pack. Okay, their fee is 0.35 bits.
Right, but if we, okay, well,
So we made over 1%.
if you even put that number in, which would not probably be a fair number, but even if you put that number into a spreadsheet, you could show us how much delta that is above.
You can, yeah,
Above CDs.
but you asked me to project.
Okay, don't use, that's fair. That's fair.
Not with Biden in that bias. That ain't gonna happen.
I understand.
Okay.
That's fair. But if we use that, because I'm just thinking, I would like to know the delta above just doing all CDs, because there's a risk there. And I
Well,
don't want to take the risk. if it's
I
not
gave you the
that risk.
information the other day, okay, Wednesday. We told you that the 12-month CDs we were getting close at 0.50 at 50 bips, and for 18 months, we were getting 70 bips, okay? The ETF package, the trailing 9 months yield on their investment grade for their POAs and municipals, okay? They got them 1.77, and their fee is 35 bips. So they made 1.32. Right, is that right? Did I do that right in my head?
Yeah, that's
1.42,
based
1.42.
based on the
That's
trailing,
trailing 9.
which interest rates are going up. So those things are-
No, we don't know that. They went down.
Yeah, I don't know.
They went down. We don't know what's going on.
But
That's the reason I can't do a projection. I don't know
I,
what's going on.
yeah, I agree, that's fair.
John, yeah, question.
Well, Clark, I would just, I understand that as of May 31st, we had $3.629 million in mostly reserve funds. would you please inform the members how much of that you think is best from it?
Up to y'all.
Well, we propose that we take about 3 million of that. That's how I was getting at what your proposal was.
Right.
Right, okay.
And the proposal was 50%.
It's 50/50. That way we can measure performance, apples and apples.
Anyone else have any questions? Required.
Point of order, the treasurer's report each month has a breakdown of the assets that roll into the 3.6 that John mentioned. In the future, the board will have a fully detailed quarterly report, it can have the monthly, but quarterly report on the activity of those funds consolidated, not just in an executive summary, but you'll actually see the activity on it. You'll be able to have a portal in which you go in there and study it. There will also be the continuity of the correct paper trail. And emphasize that enough, it's come up in our audit twice, in which it was footnoted, in which the community manager has approved this north of over $1 million in transferring fees without a paper trail.
I'd like to go ahead and just kick us off dead center and go ahead and make a motion that we accept the recommendation as it was with the 50/50 split with ETFs. And, knowing that if there's some concern about how conservative that is, that those percentages, I think, could change. However, we qualify that part of my underneath earlier that, if we fall below a number, the fees change on some of that stuff. So, that portion of that. So we have to be careful with that. But, I recommend and motion that we approve the recommendation.
I'll second.
I have a motion, I have a second, any more discussion on it? John?
I think, most are a little bit too far. I would suggest that the court, that they're going to move. I'm so sorry. I would see.
I think gavel.
I would, recommend that the motion made is like I say, it's too hard. A better motion, in my opinion, would be one that would allow for instruct the investment committee to proceed in accordance with their charter. That'll give us each one of these steps that in this charter a chance to take a look at who the investment manager is going to be, and so on. As they move down the line about what their duties are, and the reports they're required to make to us, we'd be able to make further considerations of what they find.
Well, we have an amendment, or correction, we have a motion to accept it as it is. You want to make that into an amendment to the motion? I'm not following exactly what you're saying, John. The following the charter.
What's, for example, as one example, what investment manager is like, opinions. What's the investment manager selected to give an opinion about whether it should be 50/50 or some other way, or I just thought there would be some, or for example, to make a decision about the investment right now, without knowing who the manager is going to be, what the rates are going to be by that time. Yeah, some other things that might be important to us, not as necessarily making the decisions, but giving guidance to the investment committee. So I think it's put in concrete right now, it just exactly recommended. It's premature. That's
Well, and part of the recommendation is actually select the manager. That's the manager. So that's part of that recommendation, I guess, that I was fertilized. That's what the committee's already done, I guess, in my estimation.
Did you have something?
Well, I would agree. I would tend to agree with John, it's mainly because I'm not and honest right up front, I'm not in favor of ETFs. I think our money will be doing this over time from month to month, and over a 18-month period, it'll probably be up to 1%. But we're working with public money on by members that include this table and all the others out there. And I think it's important for us to be ultra conservative with the members' money, with public money. So with that, that's why I'm in favor of what John is saying, is to just look at things closer on each item before we make a decision.
Nancy, you have a
I just want to clarify if I understood what the motion was and what I understood what the recommendation was. And the recommendation is that we would go with main management, and they would look at investments in ETFs for us. Is that correct? Correct. And then we would also look at Fidelity as well as Frost.
Fidelity, Schwab, Frost,
And then,
a litany of brokers that would have us on the CD side.
right. And then those, setting up those accounts would technically cost us no money until we decided how we were going to put our money into those accounts. Is that correct?
There's no fee on the brokerage side.
Right. And so therefore, we could actually go ahead and do that and then look at how we want to put CDs in and things like that. I believe you clarified for me the other afternoon is the fact that this money's not going in tomorrow and probably not in the next 20 or 30 days. And we've got CDs that will come due, but it won't all be there in order to be able to put it together. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe I started this whole discussion right now, telling you it's gonna be 30 to 60 days to implement.
Right, before we do anything. And so, if I understood correctly, what Jim's asking us to do is approve that we go ahead and set up at least 3 brokerage accounts for those, as well as engage main management and continue to get what their recommendations would be for ETFs. And at that point in time, I think we may have a decision to make as to what we put in. I do think that they've gone through some of the steps that are here, because they've done some of their due diligence already for us based on what they have. That's my understanding.
Okay. Then we have a motion, we have a second, any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? I can't see behind me here.
I voted yes.
There were 3 and 6 in favor, motion passed. Where's the voice, Warren?
I'm not sure what passed, but we'll see.
I think 50-50.
Okay, 50-50 or what? We'll figure it out.
The Lake Management Committee, Jim Marcus, discussed take possible action on Lowwater Crossing 2 initial inspection proposal. I think everybody got the, in your packet, what Jim's bringing forth to us.
Okay, this should be much easier. So the Lake Management Committee, we have 3 things we do. We stop the silt from coming in, we take care of the riprap on the side, and we're working on dredging the lake at some point, right? So what I'm proposing here is the number 1 thing is stopping silt from coming into the lake. So we engage with a engineering firm, Kinley Horn, which is a noted engineering firm in Dallas. And what we're looking for here is they're going to do a survey on the silt ponds in low water 1, 2, and 3 to see what we have to do. So we just want to make sure we dot our i's and cross our t's, so that when we do dredge, that we don't get our butt kicked, from the Corps of Engineers. So what this is, so I need a motion to spend not more than $4,000. So their bid is $3,500 to come out here and do an inspection and then write up what they think they're gonna need for that. So it's gonna be an engineering thing that we would send to the Corps. So if we need permits, yes or no. So this initial deal, this will come out of the lake fund that we've been saving money for. So that's what it's for. Want to spend our money wisely, make sure we do everything right. So I don't know if I can make a motion on, if I need one of you guys to do it.
Get Carthy,
Yeah, I have a few questions.
go ahead.
Jim, I know we've had 3 engineering studies in the last 10 years on the lake, and they've included recommendations on our silt ponds. And it also sounds like we only have about $100,000 in the fund right now. So if it costs $100,000, then we couldn't start silt removal maybe for 4 or 5 years. So you're just talking about the silt retention ponds.
Right, so there's, at present, there's 236,000 in the lake fund. So that's what we have, 236. There's also some money in the card fund. What was that, Crystal? 68. So if you add those together, there's $300,000, so that's the number. We probably won't do any dredging, big time dredging, probably until 23, the end of 23, probably need $500,000-600,000. So this is, we're gonna spend like $50,000 to clean out low water too. That's what we're gonna do, but we need to make sure our permits are correct before we start that.
You're gonna kill my beavers.
I think they're on surgery, so.
Yeah, they're
I got one question. Did they do this before they did the silt removal from the basins the last time? Was this required? I know they did.
We did not do it before, but, you know, after we did the dredging project, you know, we talked to the Corps of Engineers. So it was kind of loosey-goosey before. I think you remember the person that did it also got the backhoe specs. So
Right.
we're trying to do this on the up and up. So,
Okay, do we have a motion? Anyone make a motion?
So, I will for it.
I move that we spend up to $4,000 for, Kimberly Pump Board to, do their site visit and analysis memorandum.
Second. John Roach. Any discussion? Carter?
I'm looking at the resolution. It's restricted to funding refurbishment and maintenance of Lake Kiowa and the streams. Just wondering if this, what you're proposing fits in with the resolution that was voted on earlier.
yeah, so it's like, Court is talking about the streams and inflow units, that's why we said that. That includes the silt retention ponds. That's part of the inflow unit.
I see it cleaning out as part of the inflow, but hiring an engineer doesn't quite fit into the resolution. I mean, maybe we can read it in that way.
Well, permitting is a given, you have to have permits to make sure you do things correctly.
The permitting part, I understand.
This is making sure we see what permits we need.
I thought they mentioned about the inflow of streams into the lake, which is what we're actually doing there with the low water crossing.
Yeah, I understand that it does that. It doesn't say that we can hire a outside firm to advise us. Maybe that's just understood. That's just my comment, trying to read it from a layman's standpoint of what it says. We can clean out the streams, we can clean out the silt ponds. It doesn't say anything about hiring an engineer, but
It seems to be that is part of the project.
Yeah, any big time engineering thing that we undertake, you have to take the step, right? So you think about what you're gonna do, then you have to get the experts to help you, and then you have to have the people that do it. And then you have to have the permit, so it's all step by step.
John,
I have a question, Jim. This proposal is, among other things, just to determine whether or not we'll have any permitting problems and which side we want to dredge these basins, is that right?
Well, we're trying to see if we can clean them up without getting a Corps of Engineer permit. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, so basically they're going to tell us whether we can do that or
Yeah.
any other questions?
What's up to that? So we'll assume we get a good report back, and we would do low weather crossing too.
Yes, the water too.
Okay, any more questions? Discussion? Do we have a motion on, and a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
Because
Okay, next item on the list, community manager, Brian Matt.
Not necessarily in that order, but having to do with our previous discussion about property 105. I've included in the packet, the bids for, not additional to our, or the additional to our current insurance policies, but this would be, an addendum to that, to cover that. The fact that it is a vacant building is something insurance carriers, for whatever reason, don't particularly care for. And so we have a quote in there of $23.88. I've talked with a few others to see what else we can do to kind of skinny this down, and there really isn't at this point because they don't have a track record of insuring vacant properties around our community. And these are the rates that have been quoted for that. So it'd be my recommendation to go ahead and add this. It's additional cost certainly. But the exposure of a vacant building adjacent to our POA is, I think the risk outweighs the possibility of just going uninsured, which I don't think is in the best interest. So at this time, I'd like the board's approval, but we're not necessarily an initiative that I'm going to spend it, but it's going to be added to that. And the estimate of $23.88 is an estimate. That figure will change slightly, a little bit drop as some rates reevaluate, or it may go up slightly. But it will have additional impact to the carrying costs of this property. Any discussion? Do we understand any crazy curveballs? Corky?
That plus the tax, so both of those will have to be included in the carrying costs.
Absolutely.
Rather substantial.
It's
So $3,000.
up to 3,000 on an annual basis, and I did it on an annual basis, not knowing about the vote. Just to give me kind of the worst case scenario for the full on. If I call them back in 6 months and hey, we have a tenant or we tear it down or whatever, but for right now, I need that for budgeting purposes as well.
Good item, motion to approve.
Just adding it.
Adding this into.
I'll make the motion.
Up to 3,000.
Yeah, $3,000 for insurance.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Okay. As for the pavilion, I just wanted to update the board in regards to some happenings that are going to be occurring with the pavilion flooring. It will be being treated in the second week, between the second and third week of August. We have some blocked out for for no activity, in which the company that did the sealing and the involvement with that will be scheduled out there. Randy Howell has been very good enough to kind of ride this one and enforce the various warranties having to do with this application for the pavilion. This will be somewhat of some discovery as they go through these cracks and repair them. And we'll keep the board abreast of various options and or additional costs to go through there. But I did want the board to be aware that that's happening here in August. The next thing is really one of the largest expenditures of the year for the POA, and that is our road and infrastructure program that was initiated several years ago and then refined over the last couple of years. And just for the board's targeting of the memory, we will be expending $500,000 in the month of September. And 250 of it comes out of O&M under Public Works, and 250 comes out of the ARF schedule. So this is something that doesn't come to the board per se as approval, but this is part of what is set up contractually with agreements that is going through. And right now we're targeting September 20th for a 5 to 7 day window with the vendor. And there will be communications on which street it will be on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. Inevitably, we're going to miss a lane here and there as this goes through. It's the firm that was here a year ago and the year before. In fact, Sam then at one of our weekly meetings just 2 weeks ago as we did the handoff with Chris. So that's a significant impact to the community. And it's also, a financial one. So let me just put you, ease a little bit on the financial part. So of that 500, 250 sitting in the bank right now. The other 250 is in our O&M budget. Public Works is riding right now at 98% of their annual budget, so there's not a big gaping hole. But you've heard and concentrated a great deal on investments and cash flows and things like that recently. But just to keep in mind that this is part of the operating budget of your POA, and this hits in September and will show up in the October statement. And these are big swing numbers. These are not surprises. These are things the board reported.
And we're about to spend $500,000 out of our budget in September, October, would imply that we haven't been spending any money on the roads all year long. Is that what you're saying?
It's relatively small, less than $10,000 for some striping and some paved work that goes into some other categories. Actually, I think it's right about $11,000 right now. But the bulk of the shearing off, the grinding, the top coating, and then areas where the asphalt will be applied, which is by far the bulk of it, and I forget the linear feet of it, it's significance, several miles. And then the people will want to know, well, why isn't my yard being done? And we'll post, which is being done, and the prioritization that was set up a couple of years ago. I'll be glad to, put that map in the communique to show which is being done. And if your front driveways, not driveway, but your front roadways is being done, it's probably going to be slated for next year, or perhaps the following year.
So along that lines, I always thought we were doing this all year long again, but if we weren't, but now it's time to do it, I agree. But I wouldn't think that we would be spending all that money in 1 month and you just do all the roads or not all, and I know that's not all roads, that's just, so we're saying we're gonna do all that in 1 to 2 months and it's not an ongoing process for the next year?
The mobilization for road crews is much as 20% of the cost. And it's been identified over the years that it behooves the organization to lock and load to do a large scale amount once the mobilization is done, rather than somewhat of a piecemeal. I believe there was a piecemeal approach in years in the past, and Chris made some considerable points of let's go ahead and do it, keep the aggravation of people's vehicles being damaged, et cetera, to a minimum, take our quote beaten as we can and getting this implemented at the time. Number two, the ability to get the asphalt produced. You think, oh, it's nice and hot today, you're producing it. Well, they also take 2 to 3 weeks off in July. So the windows to do it are in the spring and in the fall, and then subject to temperature as well.
I noticed on Nancy's presentation, she talked about reflectors, so maybe she can add some information on that.
Sure, that was one of the top things on the survey for reflectors. Sorry. You're correct. On our long-range planning survey, it was right at the top of several different capital projects. It was considered small. capital projects, we felt like it'd be less than $75,000 to $100,000 to do. And so that was one of our recommendations to the board going forward.
And that'll be typically handled directly by our public works team. I'll go into that in just a moment. Yes, Sam?
Yeah, I was thinking of the reflectors, I know that on some of the curves, I noticed on Kyle Drive, these, that reflectors are or have been put down, so it's looks to me like very good too.
So that's really kind of ongoing, because some of the reflectors get clipped and disappear or whatever, and that's an ongoing, really, a maintenance thing for public works. And that leads me into the next subject matter, and that's having to update the board with regard to staffing. Public works position is currently aggressively being pursued. Brian Brown is assisting me in the interview process and selection process. He and his team have very similar skill sets and management approaches to how project management gets done, the utilization of assets, the utilization of sand, water, and resources. And I lean into Brian quite heavily when it comes to that, along with their management decision making. We've received currently around 45 resumes for this position. This morning, this afternoon, Brian walked in my office and dropped off the 4 or 5 finalists that he has selected, and we'll continue on with that process. It is candidly filling Chris's shoes going to take some doing. He did a first-rate job and was a very conscientious individual about common sense applications to problems, be it management problems, be it a pothole, be it some issues here at the lodge, and that replacement value, in fact, is of high value in my book. The next position that I want to talk a little bit about is the lifestyle director. He's half of what Leanne used to do, and that is a position that is proving to be quite difficult to find. We've touched a little bit on the salary with that, but the salary doesn't seem to be pushback as much as the indication of just our education right now. I don't want to poke any other holes in it. Right now, I'm only sitting on 8 resumes of interest for that particular position. Today, we resubmitted and repositioned it with the trade association, as well as it'll roll out to ND, as well as a spotlight on it with University of Northern Texas. So I've expanded the net in which we're throwing out for that critical position. The next one.
Sure, Jim.
You said lifestyle director. I'm not aware that we have a lifestyle director position. I thought we had a communication manager position. Are you combining those, or are you doing away with one?
Well, the communications director's true function was, as much as a third of her time or so was the editing of the communique, and the other 2/3 was really the lifestyle part of the coordination and scheduling of events, the supplemental, be it bands or entertainment that goes with it, the coordination with the committees, which is so key for this to be successful. This can't be a one-arm paper hanger. This has got to be someone who is glued into the various organizations and clubs to get these things off the ground. There's some extremely generous patrons out here that are willing to pay for things and subsidize things, but if they're not taken care of and listened to and get their input in, we're going against the grain. We're not getting the necessary connection that we need with the membership. And if we start to lose that, we're going to start losing volunteerism, and eventually that permeates up to the board level someday. I've seen some situations in communities where people just sit on their hands. I've had too much, too many volunteers, etc. And I don't think that'll ever happen at Lake Kiowa. But these are the sort of fissures you see that if you don't correct it and really listen and provide the residents with the entertainment, the education, and the engagement that they're looking for, they'll find it somewhere else.
For clarity, you're not creating a new position, you're just renaming the position we already had, and they're assuming the same duties they previously had.
And probably some expansion on it as well, but yes, sir. Yes, that's fine. All right, the next one is the positions here at the lodge. The lodge model is something that Vincent and I and his team are really more than struggling with in terms of how can we offer services to the membership. The standard of what we used to offer to what we're going to be able to provide short-term has changed, and what it will be as long-term has changed. I do not have a game plan or a PowerPoint presentation at handy to solve this tonight. I'm sorry, but I've not landed on that answer yet, nor has Vincent. This is of the highest priority, great concern, and I see it on the weekend. I see it every day. So why can't we have this? Why is that station closed? I can tell you that they don't like to hear when I quote the Texas Restaurant Association, seeing this as an evolution that they've never experienced, and what they think is going to come out of it, people won't like, because it will be such limited service in so many entities that they're used to being able to get the service of an independent restaurant that no longer is either in business, or they've changed their business model so dramatically and raised prices. That's the other thing. Vincent brought to me a series of concerns with some of our food costs starting to erode a little margin that we do have. So really this needs to be peeled back and really looked at what the offerings are. This is not quite a 911, but as close as I ever want to get to a 911 in a department that has some strengths, still has some weaknesses, and needs the right identity for the membership. So that's going on. Just to give you an idea, so the server rate a year ago that was subsidized by the PPP money was on or about $5 an hour plus tips. So now it's up to $9 plus tips. And some of the people don't work enough to qualify for the benefits. We have a rich benefit plan. So you're swimming up against that where they're having other jobs and they can't qualify for the benefits either here or their second job. Now, those are their own personal decisions, but that makes the market narrower and narrower and narrower to draw from for this. The one area that consistently doesn't have the big turnovers in our golf department. And that is because they've got the uniformity of what they're doing on a case basis of every day, what they're going to be doing. The change in variables in that department are relatively small. Is it hard work? Absolutely it is. Do they have huge bonuses and incentives? No, they don't. That labor force that Brian has to work with is an ongoing. He's still short a couple seasonal people. Public Works Department's down to patrol and so forth. I think last count was 4. So this is not just systemic to food and beverage. This is an overall shift in the labor's expectations and the labor that the desires of, and that they'll even consider doing. And I wish I had an answer for you. I got a pretty strong food and beverage background, and I'm really rocking back on my heels with this, candidly, to the board. And I don't have that answer. I will keep you abreast even on a weekly basis on the progress. I suspect there might be an issue or two that I hadn't considered at this point, but these are the real issues that we're facing. Sam?
Anything more?
No, go ahead.
Joe?
I totally understand that we're in some special times with job markets and the economy and the way things are going, so I get it. But one thing I think we need to do that I don't think we're doing is an exit interview process for these people that are leaving, and understanding what they're going to, what pay are they getting when they go to the next place, and why are they leaving? Maybe they're not leaving because of pay. It may be that we have too many rules, or maybe there could be a lot of reasons, right? And it may be all of those reasons, but we really need to understand that so that we know how to build that plan. And my understanding is we're not doing that exit interview process. So.
And I agree, and that does need to be done on a more consistent level. We've done it with a handful, it's certainly not very consistent, but to your point, I agree that could be one more, nugget of fact on building a strategy to rebound.
One more thing. I think it's imperative, and we probably have a pretty 911 situation here. Well, I mean, if you think about the money that we had rolling in for the previous months, and all of a sudden it shut down since this last week, and if we keep on this pace, then we're gonna have a really negative impact on the budget that we weren't foreseeing. I mean, it kind of impacted a lot of that in on the budget at the beginning, but we thought we were getting better. Maybe we're not gonna be better. So we need to come up.
Yes, well, you're absolutely right, sir. Yeah.
But we need to probably put emphasis on a short-term plan and then, and get, even if we have to have an emergency meeting or something to approve something for you.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we were talking about, the unemployment, we're not alone in what's going on out here with the lodge. I know I got a text from an individual yesterday. They went into Gainesville to the rib crib. It was closed. They didn't open till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They went to Golden Chick, same type thing. They were closed. I had lunch yesterday after church in Whitesboro at Pizza Hut. They had one person at the register, one person in the back, and one person trying to serve everybody. So it's one of those things that unfortunately we're in that position now. People, they're getting unemployment. Why work? So it's a real strange situation that we're in. And all I can do is, this is puts out what's happening, what's going on, try to keep everybody up to date on the lodge. And all we can do is ask for your patience as to when you come in here, if it's not there, well, hey, until we compete also with Windstar. Windstar hires, they pay a whole lot more money than what we pay out here. You start talking about, well, go up on the hourly rate. We go up on rates, what does that mean? Go up on views. So it's one of those type things. So anyway, next one's number 9, additional business. Joe Adams, are you wanting to discuss that or?
Okay, let me, for the record.
Okay.
I did not initially ask to put this back on the agenda. It was voted on a couple of meetings ago. I was opposed to the process, not allowing us to publicize this before we made a decision, because that was generally how we did significant rule changes. And in this case, people own these vehicles, and what I heard were the reasons for not wanting these vehicles didn't have anything to do with the rule we were passing. So again, I have no skin in this game. And then I was told, Sam, you told me that we were going to bring it into this meeting. We were going to include it with a group of other rules that may be presented in the near future, and then put those in the communique, get feedback. And if we have feedback on those, we can make adjustments. If we say we're going to approve that with other rules, I'm fine. I mean, that's just to get the community feedback on how we should do it.
Well, Julian worked on updating the rules for the rules committee, and then Corky, the current rules chairman, Matt, myself, and Mike Wimble, who was chairman. We worked on updating and the rules, and that will be one of the things. And in fact, we're to the point of being finished. Maybe at the next August meeting, I think Matt will be able to present the changes and recommendations, and the board will be able to look at it. It will be sent out in the communique and the website to get comments back from the residents before any action is taken. So
I will have some architectural control. We'll possibly have some for that. I know I have one.
okay, next one is comments from members, and got a lot of comments, a lot of questions. What we're gonna do, I'll kind of go through them, and I've asked, in the case of security, Brian's gonna do this one. We got security, the lodge, and the 52 acres. Some questions that came in. Question number one for security is Gene Vance, lot 1540. What is being done about speeding cars, golf carts, and ATVs driven by adults and teens in Lake Kiowa? If reported to security, can they be fined or have some of their privileges revoked? Golf course, eating at the lodge, etc., for a period of time. Vendors and contractors are also part of the issue when they park and take a full lane close to a hill or curve. The commentary on next door about this issue is substantial. Many people do not feel safe out walking anymore along with their dogs. Seems like there are a few consistent offenders. Are there any plans for more signage or fines? Next question deals with security. George on lot 29. Given the recent break-ins and thefts in our community, what is being done to secure the perimeter of Lake Kiowa from outside intruders? Okay, Ron?
On the security aspect, the ATV and golf carts are in fact monitored to the point where some tickets have been written. There have been some citations put through as well. The notification of these citations in a town hall meeting a week ago Saturday, and a couple of residents said, we used to post, the violators in the communique, maybe not their last name or lot number, but that there were 3 speeding tickets, there were 3 things like this. And our new security chief will be able to reinstate that for an awareness, call it embarrassment to one another, but typically those things do have a way of doing it. I do feel bad about people not feeling safe when they're walking alone. I've seen firsthand some people with, average sized dogs and they're concerned because of the traffic. I believe it's part volume as much as it is the handful of speeding. I think the volume can be a little bit more intimidating with a disproportionate number of large scale trucks that are in our community over just passing sedans. Recent break-ins really subsided after kind of a burst and taper of there in early June when we had some cars that were broken into. There were absolutely no home invasions. A couple little things put on that website there about the neighborhood saying, well, I heard such and such was broken. That is not true. There have been additional investigation follow-up having to do with similar, not identical, similar incidents in the Whitesboro area. And the Gainesville police has also been involved in monitoring this. Do I get much impact with the Gainesville sheriffs on tracking these down versus what they're trying to handle? They prioritize accordingly. They were out here, as many of you know, 3 weeks ago, apprehending 4 individuals that got onto our property that were in a high-speed chase. So these things in the community we do have some exposure. We can't make it all go away. We continue to monitor it. And I think you'll see some additional enforcement of existing, you don't need more rules, but existing rules as the new chief's able to provide the leadership necessary in that department.
Next questions from the lodge, and Brian, I pretty much has answered them, but I'll read the questions so that individuals know that we just don't listen to them. David Shelley, lot 950, what is the short-term and long-term strategy to get the lodge up and running with their full menu of food and drinks? It feels like a discounted option at full price. Tony Patterson, lot 1735. I trust you know the lodge is lacking in management. What is being done about that? People retention and overall meeting the expectations of the community. For example, having a busboy or someone to come clear and clean tables would help a ton. Janet Burbridge, lot 454. Why are we having problems with wait staff? Is management causing it? Diddy Heath, lot 297. We have been very concerned about the lack of service issues at the lodge. There seems to be discontent regarding management, pay, and how our residents are treating our staff. What if anything is the POA doing to help with these staff issues? Our casual dining area seems to be struggling to be more than it was intended. Please help them get back on track. The next one, Johnny White, lot 1634. Heart sick over the lodge closing for evening dining. Do you have any idea when it will reopen to normal? Also, is there a new menu in the making? And the last one, Jim Weber, lot 1714. What is the plan to address the situation at the lodge? You want to add anything more than what you've already covered?
Not too much on that, but the pressure of the, management perception over, is that who's driving these people away? And I frequently quoted chapter and verse regarding Sarah, who was dearly beloved within the community. And, of course, if she were ever to reconsider, she'd be welcome back with open arms. But that wasn't the driving out as much as that was her being recruited. Wholesale recruited for a position in the community, and this was something new for her. It was and that's not too far away from the last two people that left the organization, that they were recruited away from the organization for places that were more convenient for them, and that their compensation for it were definitely higher for it. So this is a great concern. I really appreciate the one comment here about helping us and get it clear to help get them back on staff, back online. And that is something that we'll work very aggressively towards doing, because Vincent and the team want happy staff to do the work. Just having staff isn't the solution. It's the right attitude that you have to have.
Okay, the next one is 52 acres. Lonnie Clements. Lot 1355. Why doesn't the county take a couple of the acres and make another lot to store boat trailers? I requested a space for my pontoon trailer 1 year ago, and I'm still 24th on the list. The lot would not have to secure just a place for trailers. It would be a responsibility of the person to ensure the ton was locked. This would provide additional funds for Lake Kiowa and improve the look of the neighborhood. Thanks for your concern. I've asked John Fox to comment on that.
On the 52 acres, I like looking Nancy across the table there too, because as we've gotten survey results back, and I think what I heard from a recommendation from the Long Range Planning Committee and Land Use Committee too is looked at, we would like to try to do a little planning out there. So it might be premature to start something that's hard to pull back off of again then or something to figure out, where does it go if we choose to do some other things on that piece of property. So I guess you could look at it as a temporary measure of some sort, but I think the answer is that we really need to do some planning on that 52 acres, and we're recommending that plan.
That's correct. It was in the long range survey, and there were actually more comments than there were votes as to the importance of it. So there were more comments similar to this one here in regard to needing more storage. To Jim's point, the long range planning committee really believes that we need to have a better master plan for all of the POA properties. And one of the things that we as a committee have discussed is the fact that although we have 52 acres there, that might not be the best place to put it. There may be some other places that are better, and we may need to move some things that we have now. And so moving those things now, we actually open up those spaces. And so that's the recommendation from here for the long range plan.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I mean, we facilities committee clerk are still here. We did talk about that with another piece of property within their actually water district property. So the need is out there, and we just haven't found the solution yet.
Does any of the members of the audience have any questions on the board? you would, say your name and lot number and what would be your question?
Randy
Ready?
Howard, 1014. And my question is, Randy, you might relate to this one really quick. The other day, I noticed, golfers golfing on number 10. And there was a dad, his two kids. And on that, one of them was on a one-wheel, like a skateboard, carrying his golf clubs on his shoulder. Well, I do, they're out there, people use them on golf courses. Not the two-wheel or that you see, like I've seen those stand up on. This was actually like a skateboard, but it's just one wheel in the middle. Is that something that's been approved or allowed on a golf course?
Brown, my knowledge, Brown gave me, that's one of the instances I told you about, Daddy having two kiddos under 12 years of age and was running into, never had that problem before. So he was trying to abide by the rules and making the kid, but not making him walk and slow down on the surface. That's all we talked about too.
Yeah.
With the like skateboard.
Yeah, I know, just observed it, he turned the ball on hole number 10, he traveled up and down the fairway everywhere else, had to play 5 holes on one hole. He wasn't golf, he was just, while everybody else was hitting, he was just going around everywhere he was going. He was just moving the ball. So I just was curious for those things to be approved.
No, I have no idea that. Can't answer the question.
Anyone else? Anyone have any questions? Okay, at this time, I'd like to, go ahead.
You were just getting ready to do that.
Your name and, lot number, please.
DFI 719. I can't get them, but so on the executive session there, I see that there's the dam updates, and that's something that we've always done in open, so that we're abreast of what's going on with the dam.
We're going into executive session here shortly after we have questions, from the.
Yeah, and I'm asking why the dam is in executive session.
Say again?
I'm asking why the dam update is an executive session instead of open session as it has been in the past.
Yeah, good, John.
It's in, executive session is it's discussion of a contract. And those kinds of legal matters, along with counsel's recommendations and suggestions, are traditionally and allowed under the bylaws and the statute for executive session consideration.
Okay, good. Awesome. If it would have said contract consideration, then I would know. It just says dam update. And so that's why I asked.
Yeah, what day on the contract?
Perfect, thank you. Wanted to know.
Roger Smith, lot 172. Yeah, in your executive session, you have an appeal. I have an appeal. I got a citation for a back gate deal.
We're going to executive session and we will cover you at that time if you would
I
like.
can stay before that, right?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
yes,
So executive session, I just didn't,
yeah.
I waited a long time.
we may ask you to go outside, I'll call you in after we get back into executive session. So, good. Okay, can I have a motion to?
Point of order.
Go ahead.
Could I ask a similar question that Dina asked on the dock status and then the estate sale that we earlier added, why those items are on the executive session? What are the reasons for that?
Go ahead, John.
I'd really rather have our legal counsel answer.
Oh, that'd be fine, we can do that.
The dock status is going to involve some discussion of legal issues, and so the discussion of questions to the attorney could be done in an executive session.
So, you're saying you're giving us advice on the dock?
I'm not giving advice on the dock, I'm going to be discussing legal issues that may relate to information being provided on the dock.
Okay.
So it's more legal related, actual,
Especially, so that's allowed. And then similar for the estate sale. that was-
I put the estate sale on because of the fact that, some situations that we have encountered of enforcement, which is allowed on the bylaws.
Enforcement would be.
Maybe lack of enforcement would be a better thing, and it involves some of the members, and I felt it would be better to have it on executive session rather than public. The bylaws allow for enforcement actions on executive sessions.
I believe, yes, it allows for enforcement actions, but I think that was intended for enforcement of specific.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion. I have my opinion.
Okay, well, I'll ask James to ask the tool.
I don't know enough about the particular items and I've not reviewed, so I don't have an opinion right now. I think we're in your executive session, it's definitely broader, but I haven't looked at this particular issue.
As
It
long
will
as,
be an enforcement action that the board needs to take action upon. And the way to do it is in the executive session. That's what we will be doing.
that's what it is, enforcement on specific action, that's on the rules for the law.
Anything else? Can I have a motion to adjourn from our regular session? We'll report back in for executive session. We have a motion, have a second. John, okay, all in favor? Okay, let's think about a 15-minute or 10-minute break.